welcome to the PPM Playbook Podcast. I'm your host, Laura Watts, and for each episode, I will be talking to a guest to unpick the complexities of running effective programmes and portfolios of work. My company, Verto, is a veteran in this space, having supplied a programme management solution to public sector organisations since 2008. So without further ado, let's get started. Hello and welcome to another episode of the PPM Playbook Podcast. I am Laura Watts, I'm the Marketing Manager at Verto. I am joined today by my colleague Simon.
Hi, I'm Chief Client Officer here at Verto.
And we are joined today for the first time ever by somebody who is not from Verto. We are joined by Miranda Craig. Welcome to the podcast. Miranda, you are the Director of Strategy and Change at the Financial Reporting Council. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Laura. Well, thanks for asking.
That's all right. Thank you for inviting us here, actually. So, yes, thank you for your welcome to your new office.
Our new office.
Yeah, lovely. So, Miranda, I wanted to just start with a little bit of background on you. I've done a bit of delving and diving into your career past. So it seems that you've spent quite a lot of your career to ensuring governance and compliance and things like that are working as they should in the organisations that you've worked with. So could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I'm by profession a company secretary before I started this role. So my career has primarily been running secretariats in various organisations, starting in professional services, so doing that for clients, and then in the latter half in-house, so for various companies, including several large FTSE 100. So yeah, it's quite a varied role to be in, but it does expose you to lots of sort of project management and governance, as you say, and compliance type activities.
Yeah. So, Miranda, tell me a little bit about how you ended up at the FRC then.
So, rather circuitously, via a year spent at the what is now the Department for Business and Trade, working on Sir Donald Brydon's independent review into the effectiveness of audit. So that kind of it fitted with my governance experience and my sort of role as a company secretary. And off the back of that, I ended up at the FRC in 2020 to support the process of sort of organisational transformation with a view towards some legislation which unfortunately still hasn't happened yet, but is going to happen very soon, I hope.
Lovely, yeah. I mean, there is still a little bit of crossover, I suppose, isn't there? You know, with change management and everything like that, you're in the strategic decision-making frame, and it all does need to comply and align with the governance structures in place. So I suppose that there is a synergy there for sure.
Indeed, yeah.
So you are here today because you have fairly recently, I think you're still within the first year of having Verto onboarded in the organisation. So can you tell me about your role when it comes to Verto? What have you been doing for that?
I've been the executive sponsor, which is great because it means I don't actually have to do it. No, so I've until recently part of my bit of the organisation included the project management office, and so I've been responsible for supporting them as they put forward the proposals for a tool, a product that we needed to enhance our project management, and just essentially to make sure that they've got everything that they need and that it's a successful change process, basically.
Right, got it, yeah. And you sort of touched on it a little bit there. They needed to improve processes. What were the challenges that you were facing at the FRC, or what were the reasons really that you decided to bring in a tool or bring in the platform?
Well, I suppose I'll probably go back a little bit further than the point at which we decided we needed something, because it's been part of a longer journey. 5 years ago, we were a much smaller organisation,
right,
and we didn't have a project management framework. We didn't have a PMO. We had nothing really to speak of. It didn't mean that people weren't bringing good project management principles to their work, but there was no structure and consistency around it, and no way of reporting, no way of assuring. So none of that was there. So we kind of started from a point of zero and knew that we needed to get to a certain, not bells and whistles, everything sort of that a huge organisation would need, but something that was commensurate with our role as a regulator and with what at that time was a sort of growing organisation. So we put the PMO in place. So that was one change that needed buy-in and support, and then it needed to get its feet under the table. We needed to put project management framework in place. We needed the tools and the templates for people to just start doing things a bit more consistently. And then we built ourselves a sort of in-house data repository. Our very kind data analysts coded something for me. And that worked well for a little while, but it wasn't integrated. So we were still operating with that as a place where project managers would input information about their project and its progress, and we could use that for some reporting purposes. But all of their planning, all of their risk management, everything else was happening in separate templates and stuff. So it wasn't scalable.
Yeah.
And so at that point, that was around about end of 2023. We thought, okay, we need to move it to the next level now and have something that allows our project managers to do all of that seamlessly.
Yeah.
So the integration challenge was really the one, as well as the reporting, having easier reporting and more choice around like what we could do with the information that was in a system.
So was there a specific trigger, or was that always the plan? Like, we'll put the PMO in, look at the systems, and it's always there, or was there, almost a thing where you go, look, we need to do better than this and start something a bit more structured?
I'm going to be cheeky and say a bit of both.
Yeah.
Because, it was always the plan that we knew that to get to, because we used the maturity stages with sort of that would be familiar to people in central government of 0 to 5.
Yeah.
And we kind of went, okay, well, 5 is, if you're the Ministry of Defence or something, and we're not. As much as I believe very passionately what we do is very important, it's not quite there. So we decided we want to be top end of 3, maybe 4 in some places.
Yeah.
And it's quite hard to achieve that if you haven't got the tools for it. So we knew we would need to do something. I think most organisations, when they get to that stage, depending on what it is that they do and how mature their systems are, will always have a build or buy conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Can we make it ourselves, or should we just go out and procure it?
Yeah.
And so we kind of had that conversation, and we thought, what, actually, value for money wise, there's so much that you can get now. We're better off looking externally for that kind of product.
It also sounds to me like you went through the people, process, technology route.
Yeah.
So build the team. You mentioned some templates. It'd be interesting to know what format those templates were. They obviously got to a point where either the team was too big, the projects were too complex, or whatever it might have been, and then you thought, right, let's get the technology in.
The route you've gone is actually quite a sensible way to do it, because we have clients that go the other route. They're like, we need to get better project management, let's buy a system.
Yeah.
And they think the system's going to get them there.
Yeah.
But you need the PMO knowledge, you need some templates, you need to know what you want from it.
Yeah.
And you'll be surprised how many times we say, okay, what do you want us to build? And they're like, not really sure.
Yeah.
Whereas
Yeah.
it sounds like you actually had the bones of a good framework and some good templates to actually build into something.
Yeah, because it's especially when you're essentially coming from a zero base as we were, the first thing you need is the cultural change, because there weren't, it wasn't universally accepted that there was a need for project management
Right.
deliberately in inverted commas, because that in some places, and it's completely normal in any organisation for people to go, well, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I'm absolutely fine. I know what I'm doing. I know my job. I deliver well. I perform well. Why would we need to spend time, effort, money on a thing if I think it's fine? So, first you got to break through those barriers of there's a need and there's a better way, and that what that better way looks like, and get that kind of acceptance and buy-in for the cultural change, because you can have the fanciest tool in the world if no one's using it. It's a total waste of time.
I always say that, even if the tool's amazing, if no one's using it and you don't know how to get the best out of it, it doesn't matter how good it is.
Exactly.
So we talk a lot about the cultural change, don't we, and getting that right.
Yeah.
Just, I know it's a slight deviation, but was there any trick to that, or anything you learned from that where you're like, this is how we get people on board? Because we face a lot of people like exactly what you say. I'm good at what I do. I plan really well. I'm happy doing everything on my spreadsheets or whatever else. There's a nervousness to put things in a central location and to share everything, and that is part of the push for this. But you obviously can't get good reporting out if you've got 20 projects on 20 different machines and 20 different spreadsheets. So how did you tackle the culture?
I think those are universal issues. I've never worked in an organisation that hasn't had some version of that, and I've worked in a lot of places. And for us, and again, I think it helps. We're still a relatively compact organisation size-wise. We deliberately created the PMO to not be a centralised project management resource. So it's not, here are some project managers, use them. What we do at the FRC is very policy led, and it's also very technical in places. And so just overlaying project management onto that is not necessarily helpful. A lot of people are doing, primarily here for their technical knowledge or their policy knowledge, and that's their thing and that's their value to the organisation, but they're also required to do project management as part of their role. So we wanted to make it centre of excellence to support those people in improving, making their lives easier. So not trying to step on their toes or not trying to rub up against what they're doing in any kind of way, because we knew we were never going to have an operating model that said, let's have a pool of 50 project managers, because that's just not the type of projects we do and can support. I think if you're doing lots of IT software change and things like that, and lots of sort of repetitive but quite similar infrastructure type things, that model can work because your project managers over time get skilled in that type of project. But ours are like super different, and none of our project managers are ever going to be accountants, auditors, actuaries or lawyers with 10, 15, 20 years experience. That's just never going to happen. So we started from a place of, we're not competing with you for your space. We are here to support you and give you things that make your life easier so that you can actually spend more of your time doing that thing that you came here to do. And so in that way, we've tried to never make it this push me pull you type thing where there's a sense of tension there. It's always an enabling function.
I think that's super important because that's what we do come up against, is that tension of, well, I want to do my job, but you're making me do this thing with the system, and why am I doing that when I want to be getting on with this? And the key is that communication up front and saying, this is why we're doing it. It's better for the organisation, but also this is why it's better for you. This is how it makes your job easier and gives you more time to do other things, but helps us report, helps us make better decisions, and all of that sort of stuff.
Identity thing as well, right? Not everybody identifies themselves as a project manager. They might be doing project management as part of their job, but if you ask them, what are you, what value do you bring? Probably project management isn't the first thing that they will come to.
Probably the biggest common factor of all our clients is that everyone doing project management doesn't think they're a project manager, or certainly hasn't been trained in it. I mean, there's obviously pockets where people are super good and have all the qualifications, but there's lots of people who do project management using our system and in our clients that just don't have that training. So but it's just part of their day-to-day, isn't it?
Exactly, people outside of that core project team that are still very influential. The work they do is still very influential to the success of that project, and they don't want to be swamped with, this is how you run projects. It needs to be a really easy to manage fluid system that everybody can get involved in, but it's not too onerous on it being project management. That's really interesting. Could you talk a little bit about the benefits that you expected to see, some of the benefits that you are experiencing through bringing this platform in?
So the reporting was one aspect of it. So we wanted to be able to have greater assurance over but I suppose both the breadth of the reporting, is it capturing everything we think it should, but also the accuracy of it, sort of point of time. Is this really where we are in our portfolio? Because we weren't, obviously as part of that journey, we weren't looking at portfolio management. We were project by project, and you couldn't get that overview. Really, not without a lot of manual and people in the team sort of really getting some serious Power BI skills into. So which is always good stuff. But there's again scalability. There's a point past which you can't really maintain that. It's not a good use of anyone's time. And then the other benefit and which we're already starting to realise is around just reducing the sheer number of artifacts that people have to interact with. So if you've got to go into one spreadsheet for your planning tool, one spreadsheet for your RACI, one spreadsheet for your risk management, that's just irritating and feels time consuming and is a bit disjointed. Whereas if you can integrate all of that so that you're putting information, a data point in once, whether that's sort of a time frame or a responsibility or a bit of blurb around status, and that is then used in all the places it needs to be used in a system to create something that you want as a project manager or as a project sponsor or as a committee, a governance committee, that just feels more streamlined, and you don't kind of realise that you are doing all of those things that you were previously doing, but instead of going into 7 different things, you're just using one system. So that was really what we were trying to do, is make it smoother for people.
Yeah, sounds good. And you obviously chose Verto.
Yes,
Brilliant.
we did indeed. Otherwise you wouldn't be here. It would be really weird.
That'd be so awkward, wouldn't it? Could you talk us through your criteria? Why did you end up with Verto?
Yes, so I mean, we wanted something that could, and we were very careful about our sort of, in fact we probably went a bit overboard with our tender requirements. We really wanted something that could give us that foundation, could get rid of those pain points. We spent a lot of time going around all of our project management community and asking them, what do you want to see? And all the usual stuff came out. Just the Gantt chart's just so stressful to.
It's a big part for most
fill
people,
in,
isn't it?
and I just want something to do it for me, or I want to see my visual stuff, user interface, really important to people. I want somewhere I can see all of this important stuff in one place, or I want something that can quickly spit out reporting on my frequency to fit with my project governance, because we've got, as everybody does, lots of things going on in lots of different places, and they're all ever so slightly different because they need to be.
But people work in different ways.
But the process itself and the workflow that sits underneath that can be standardised so that they can all get what they want, but within the same kind of system. So I don't think we were asking for the main on a stick, but we did have pretty, I think, high standards for what we were going out to look for.
I think that's a good thing. And I think, again, a positive thing about how you've done this is actually consulting people before, saying, like, what do you want, what should we bring in? Because what can sometimes happen is people aren't consulted, they hear that a system's coming in and there's already a bit of nervousness about it. Well, what if I can't learn it? What if it isn't what I want? How's it going to be better? So if you've actually helped them understand it along the way, that's going to make it a bit more positive to implement it the first time, get people used to what it's about and create some positivity before you get going.
Yeah. And remembering always that you're never doing this in isolation. So we were not at that time, and I don't think anyone would ever be, the only people looking to make some sort of change in the organisation. So if you're hitting people with, you're going to have to start using this for project management, and by the way, our finance system is changing, or the way you do your expenses is going to change, or some HR processes, the overall quantum of change that's occurring and people's resistance to it as a result, everyone's got a slightly different tipping point at which they go, I'm just disengaging now because it's too much. So we absolutely didn't want to trigger that with anyone. So that upfront investment, from my perspective, I think is the thing that puts you on solid footing and buys you some goodwill later down the line when you inevitably have some bugs or missteps. People are far more likely to forgive you those if you spent that time up front.
They're on the journey then. They understand the point of it, not just... And that's a really key thing to do. So.
And one thing we did notice is that you call it Verto for projects.
We do.
Which is really interesting. How much terminology have you coined, or how much configuration have you done to the system to make it feel like your own?
That's a really interesting one. So we've I'm probably going to give a bit of a fudgy answer here because, again, one of the privileges being a sort of SRO is you don't get really, really into the detail. But so we started from a principle of we don't want to a product that we have to over-configure to start with probably isn't the one that's flexible enough for us. And whilst we're keen to have the sense of, I say branding, but we're not a commercial organisation, so there's an identity. No, but
there's a corporate culture.
There's a
people
feel, isn't it? Where you can log in and see that it's your terminology, your language, so it's not an alien system.
And you
want people to take ownership.
Exactly.
Of it, don't you? Yeah.
So it's kind of we focus quite a lot on not forcing too much configuration for the sake of it. So, if the terminology worked and was generic and understandable, we weren't going to be like, oh, well, but here we use this word, so please change it. But equally, where we've got very specific stages of our project management framework and language that we use around that people are already familiar with, because the important thing for us was that we were able to tailor it enough that our project framework is still visible in the system. Like when you go into it, you can see that it's designed for us and by us, but being able to do that in a way that wasn't essentially and there's a cost implication with this as well. We've got to think about value for money, because we're a government body that if you're changing it fundamentally, then you should just bought something different, right?
But again, not starting with a blank page is quite a key thing, because if it's just like there's nothing there, what do you want? It takes a lot longer to build it. But from what you're saying, if something was there and you can work with it, we don't need to change it. But if there's something we need to alter to make it a bit more FRC, we'll change it.
And that's where the requirements kind of discussion as part of the tendering process was really important, because we could say we absolutely must have functionality that does this, and this. We'd probably quite like it if it can also do this. We're not that fussed but it would be nice if it does this. And then we could focus our time and attention on, for the musts, within those musts, can we get it as FRC friendly as possible, and actually being it, really then you're down to field changes and stuff, and that's less of an issue. But if it's fundamental modular functionality that just doesn't exist, and you're trying to force that into that's
so different. Absolutely.
Who's got time for that?
Yeah, totally. Just carrying on that configurable sort of element. Moving away from the corporate culture, though, you guys also follow the Teal Books guidance for project project delivery. So how good was Verto to support that framework and that way of working? Did you feel it slotted into place?
I think so. Obviously not naming names, but what you often find this as a government body when you're out procuring and using the frameworks and stuff, is that supplier familiarity with the guidance and the frameworks that we're working within, and especially the terminology with them and the way that they're structured, is really variable, even if they're on a framework. Right. So it was important to us that Verto sort of understood when we said functional standards. It didn't go, and then what now? So in that sense, that's really helpful, because we don't really want, as a client, to have to educate the supplier as to why a thing is important within our organisation. And so it seems slightly odd to me that you could have suppliers on a government framework who actually haven't taken the time to understand what that what that involves. But I suppose so. Lesson learned to any of them who might have to be listening. That good tender applications include some vague understanding of what the environment that you're operating in.
It's not just the tool, it's what we talked about at the start of this, wasn't it? The culture, what has to happen, and also what you have to follow, the maturity journey. All of those things are all part of it,
and staying up to date with it, because it's constantly changing and improving, right? There's always new stuff coming out from the NAO, new stuff coming out from the new sort of projects function, new learnings, as well as stuff that's coming in, from academia or the private sector. So, again, it's kind of, I know it might be more moon on stick territory, but suppliers who can do that for you and come to a conversation ready for
with that in mind, and with like you say, a level of understanding.
It's such a time saver.
It's an interesting one in the sales process, because you kind of want to say, it's all everything, but it can be a depressing thing to say, look, system's never done. It always has to change. So you might have it set up perfectly in your first 3 months, 6 months, whatever, but then it still needs to adapt for what's going to happen the year after that. Absolutely. So one of the things that we have to explain to people when they're buying it is, this will need to be a constantly evolving thing, because everything will change, and we have to stay on top of those changes as do you. So the tool can't be like, great, this year,
this is it, done.
And then next year it's not. So it's.
But at least it's easier to do that now, right? George, my head of PMO, and I were joking about this yesterday when we were prepping for this podcast. And we said, remember the time when everyone was on an on-premise perpetual license, and there was no real driver to have sort of customer roadmaps or you know that kind of stuff, because it's like, well, here's your thing, and updates would come on a disc in the
one of my first jobs here was going around with a disc and putting it on people's machines.
Yeah, and you'd have to
getting
update
them to
everyone's profile separately.
Yeah,
whereas now it's like that competitive driver in a SaaS world to be roadmap, constant functionality updates, bringing people into those sort of user communities to talk about what's worked for them, what they wish they had.
The community is super important to us.
Yeah.
We try and do it a bit of half and half. So half of it is where we want to take the tool based on what we know is going to be needed, but then the other half is what do the people on the ground need, what little features are going to make their life a lot easier, because we understand it, but we're not using Verto 8 hours a day. So those people that are like, yeah, if I could just do this, it would make it so much better. And a lot of the really good features when we demo didn't come from us, they came from clients, and I'm proud of how we do listen to our clients and stuff. And we've even done stuff where we've demoed, we haven't won the business, but the stuff they were asking for, we're like, that's a really good idea. Let's build that in, you know, and that's how the tool gets better. So
and we really, I think as a customer, we really value being able to do that, because being in that user community is a real virtuous circle type thing, because we might enter at a point that we become customer and we start talking to people, but there are already people there that have been on a similar journey to us, and we can learn from them, and we go to the spotlight sessions, for example, and hear from people who say, oh God, I just wish if I could go back 6 months, at this decision point I would have gone a different direction, and maybe that would have been helped, and we could be, oh, we're not there yet, or like we're just about there, we could. That's a lesson. Do we need to think about that? And equally, we can bring some of our experience then either to them or to the next person coming. So that feels nice to be able to do that.
It's funny sometimes at the user group. Some people are like, well, relatively new. We've only been doing it 2 or 3 years. And everyone's like, wow, okay, that's ages. We've only been doing it 2 or 3 weeks. But they all feel at different phases, and that it's perfect for us where they can learn from each other. And
I feel like the industry mix, the mix of industries that we bring to the community groups as well, are really interesting, because you might find somebody on the NHS doing things wildly differently because they're in a different industry, but you could pick up nuggets of that. Oh, you know, that's an interesting way to look at that. You know, let's try that. You know,
and I do wonder if, because of that diversity, if you've got lots of people from lots of different types of organisations coming together, do you think that makes for a more open and frank, sort of trusting discussion? Because it's not people who are all competing for the same space who feel like they can't share. Everyone's just there because they want to learn from other people, but they recognise the quid pro quos. They've got to share their experience, so it can be very open, and people aren't afraid to say, we didn't do that as well as we could have done.
It's encouraging when people have to do that and say, actually, we weren't as good as we thought we were, or we had to learn this lesson. And there is an honesty and a bit of a soul searching about that. But we've tried to create an environment where that's acceptable and it's fine, you know. And the best journeys are the ones where people are like, actually, we were here and we've come on so much, but you have to accept where you are to figure out where you're going, don't you? So that's where it comes from.
As the sponsor for the Exco sponsor for the Verto project and the implementation, how have you and your team sort of paved the way? How are you still influencing people to pick up and use the system? How's adoption going? You know, like I say, you're nearly a year in.
So we're I suppose I'm technically no longer SRE because we've passed we're now in the sort of, you know,
now in it,
in the implementation stage. But no, you're right. And similar to the approach we've taken throughout the sort of project management maturity journey, we want to really focus on the adoption element of implementation, and not rush the benefits, as important as they are. I think, again, going back to our point of, you can have an amazing tool if no one's using it, and that early period of people's first interaction with it, or first few months of interaction with it, if that's smooth and goes reasonably well, and they feel like when they don't know something, they know where to go to find out, they know who to come to for learning, they know how to use the core bits of functionality that, to your point of, if I could just do this, and that's going to differ person by person. So we're kind of focusing a lot on making sure that adoption process goes as smoothly as possible, because that then is our core champions group, people who know how to use the system, get benefit from it, will sort of evangelise for it in other places, and as new people come in or we expand it out, there's a group of users already who are there who can go, I had that problem. It's actually really easy once you know how to do it. Because I think if you don't concentrate some investment there, you will fall over later. And you should, to your point about being honest, you should never kid yourself that your adoption is fabulous if you're getting signals that it's not.
Yeah.
So we're kind of really trying to focus on getting that right.
Pathway for help is really important, because there's only so much support we can provide, but context sensitive to people who work in FRC said the specific issue will always be a much better answer if someone's like, I know that exactly the job you're doing, what the challenge you've had, and this is how I got over it. It's a much easier question to answer from internal champions, for sure.
And once we're really, really solid on that, then we can start adding all the, the whizzy bells and whistles and asking more of people and saying, how comfortably are you doing this, and what if we did that? But you wouldn't expect someone to get in a Ferrari on their provisional license and expect a good outcome. So we've kind of,
again, that does happen. I don't want to keep giving cautionary tales, but people are like, we've got this tool, it does all these things, let's put all these things in, and then from day one people are like, wow, my job's harder than it was because now I'm doing all these extra things. I have to navigate
all this,
So I think your way is quite sensible. Let's get you in, get it embedded, and then build it over time and make it work. Doing everything right. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Can I get that in writing?
Absolutely. Yeah. Like, it's on camera now. It's been said. So.
It's documented.
It exists in the world.
I forgot.
So you can play it back as many times as you want.
Next performance review.
Yeah, there we go. So moving on to organisational goals, we work very closely with clients to make sure that Virto is sort of, supporting those strategic goals for an organisation. What are your goals? What goals is Virto supporting?
Yeah, lots. So we've got, one of the goals was obviously moving smoothly away from the legacy tool that we had, because that in itself, although it wasn't doing everything we wanted it to, people were using it and it kind of worked.
Right.
So there's always that worry of, have you sacrificed something that was okay for something that looked like it was going to be better, and actually you don't make the move smoothly. So we've successfully done that, I believe. The time, the efficiency savings is a big one for us. We have, like everybody, limited resources. We're perennially being asked to do more with less, and that should be achievable because there's so much you can do with technology now to automate things or to make processes less onerous. So the time, the integration point, so we've already got rid of, basically overnight 7 separate templates that we were previously using under the old system. So that in itself has been a boon, because by getting rid of those, we must surely, even if you can't, because we don't record time, specifically, you must be saving some time by virtue of having done that. And we've also then, because as I mentioned, we sort of we're now moving on in the maturity journey from project management to portfolio management and portfolio visibility, being able to do that now with a higher degree of assurance that what's in the system is everything that should be there, and that the accuracy of it is more likely to be better than it was previously. You're never going to get 100% completion and 100% accuracy on everything, but the ability to know that the audit trail is there and to understand how people are using it. So those have been our main goals, and ultimately that model works and will continue to work and be sustainable for a significant period of time, as we sort of change as an organisation.
Yeah. It's about the maturity journey as well, isn't it? So you start at one place and you keep pushing forward and adding new bits and stuff like that. So,
which sort of answers my final question, which is, now that you're in implementation phase, what's next for the FRC? I assume it's working through that digital maturity journey. Anything else? Yeah,
continuing to have a partnership with you as a customer, and going back to talking about the user communities and things like that, being able to participate and to understand what else can we do, what else is coming down the pipeline, would that be useful for us, how might we adopt that, but without falling into that trap of
new shiny
the
thing.
new shiny thing. Oh yeah, I'm a sucker for the new shiny things.
Yeah.
It's basically that, continuing on that journey, consolidating on what I hope are really good, solid foundations, and being a model of good practice, really.
Fantastic.
Excellent. No, I'm sure. Do you want me to say it again? Doing everything right.
Well, thank you so much for coming on and joining us today. It was fabulous to have you. Thank you as well, Simon.
No, I appreciate it, and thank you for your
Oh,
hosting.
Just sorry I couldn't bring my dog.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, we'll
Dogs of Verto.
Dogs at Verto.
Yes.
There should be more dogs.
Yeah.
And we'll try and make it happen.
I'll send you a picture.
I've also
You can
promised.
add it to
I
We
think
can
I
pop it on the
promised.
podcast. Absolutely. A little montage. Yeah. Make it work.
We should do an animal theme, because I think I promised all of the viewers that there'd be a donkey story at some point. And we have still not.
The donkey
I
story
wasn't
is coming.
expecting that. Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
So
It was a key part of why we started the company.
yeah.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
There's a
no,
donkey
you
story.
have to,
There's a
There's a
nugget.
teaser.
There's a
There's a
teaser, isn't
teaser,
it?
yeah.
Yeah. So we will explore that at a later date.
We
But I
will.
do think Ross needs to be in the room for that one.
Yeah, I'm the donkey.
Of course. Yeah.
Oh, well, if you've got a
We're
Ross,
portable.
then you can call the podcast the one with the donkey.
Oh yeah. Good
Very
idea.
Good.
Yeah.
Very good.
Right. Well, that's
There
to
you go.
come. I definitely won't cut that bit
That's a
out.
You can have that
teaser.
one for free.
Thank you so much to everybody who has been watching and listening. Do subscribe. Do follow us again and join the next one. And yes, thank you very much. That's the end of that episode.